Here's an interesting one. Today is today is National Snowplow Mailbox Hockey Day. You could interpret that however you would like, but apparently it's a thing. It's on the internet, so it must be true. All right, let's get into expectations. Expectations. What I'm going to talk about is probably going to be more music related, but obviously it will be applicable to most situations that anybody's in. So when we interact with other people, we have certain expectations. For example, if I go buy some paint from Lowe's, let's say I don't know a lot about paint, but if I go to a paint department or a paint store, I have expectations that I'm dealing with somebody who's knowledgeable or perhaps an expert in paint, and they're going to help me not only make the right choices for color, but types of paint. Flat, satin, semi-satin, gloss, whatever. All those different types of paint. So I would go to a store and expect that I need to do this project. I need paint and I need direction on what kind of paint I'm going to get. So imagine the expectations you would have going and buying paint. As simple as that is, what would you expect from that salesman? Like I said, knowledge, and that they're an expert and they're going to direct me to make the best choices for my home. What kind of expectations would the paint salesman have of me? Courteous, kind, not rude, not say, oh my gosh, I had no idea how much paint is, and then start blaming him for the cost of the paint. He didn't make up the prices. But we do that. We walk into a store and we want to buy something, and we complain to the salesman or the cashier about how unbelievably expensive it is. I experienced this too when I owned my own landscaping business. I could go and give somebody a price on what it would cost to put in a paver patio, for example. Now, I had done it long enough to where if somebody emailed me or called to inquire about doing that, of course, talking about the cost of what that might be became easier to give them a general idea of what something like that would cost. And then, there's a price per square foot. And of course, there's a lot of other factors that determine what it's going to be, accessibility, blah, blah, blah. Excuse me. So I got to where I could say, okay, if you want a project like that, you're looking at $10,000 to $15,000 or something like that. And then people would have like a knee-jerk reaction. Oh my gosh, that's unbelievable. That's outrageous. That's robbery. That's this, that's the other. So obviously these people had no concept whatsoever on what a project like that may cost. They've done no research whatsoever. And so when they tell me that my bid was too expensive or that it was outrageous, I would always ask them, okay, I understand. Compared to who? I actually got over to where I didn't even say that. Anyway, if I gave them a general idea, that usually eliminated certain people from the mix. But if they were okay with those numbers, then I would go ahead and put a bid together. But a lot of times what I found out early on is that if I asked them, well, compared to who, have you received any other bids? They would say, well, no, I haven't. All right, well, I know my competitors pretty well. Some of them I knew personally. And sometimes I would have customers share with me different bids. And if they got 2 or 3 bids and we were all within like $100 or so, let's say $500 plus minus, that would tell me that each of us contractors are bidding properly and according to the job. if you had somebody that was extremely high and somebody that was extremely low and somebody that was in the middle, it's hard to evaluate where we're sitting exactly. It means there's a possibility of three people who have no idea what they're doing. But if you get three people that are all within a certain parameter, then you can go, okay, that's probably what the market rate is for pavers. Wow, I took a big turn from paint, didn't I? So we started putting these expectations on people, and we sometimes we manufacture expectations in our mind with actually nothing to base those off of. So I am in the music business, which I enjoy. I love through teaching and recording and performing. That's my job. That's all I do now. I'm not a landscaper anymore. I'm just a full-time drummer, and which that requires work to keep that going. Some people might view that like, oh, he's got it easy now. That's not really the case. So these expectations. Here's two scenarios that I've seen recently, and some other things that I've experienced along the way. One is who or what determines somebody being a pro. So pro is just an abbreviated version of profession, like what you do for your living, right? So if I go to the bank and I want to do baking, the banker, that they're professional bankers, that's their profession. If I want to have my house built, I go to a contractor because that's his profession. He's a professional house builder or home builder, however you want to say that. I go to them because they're the experts and I am not. So, in regards to teaching, I have a pretty successful teaching business that's been going on for a few years now, and that took years to build, even as I was doing it on the side. But nonetheless, when people buy drum lessons from me, they're seeking advice from somebody who knows more than they. And they're looking at me as the expert in my field of teaching and drumming and my ability to relay information to somebody else that would resonate with them and mean something to them and to motivate them and to encourage them so that they could become the best drummer that they can be. Sometimes I tell my students, I'm going to turn you into me, but better. I think I have a certain skill set. I don't know everything. I'm not proficient in all areas of drumming. I'm not a fast metal drummer like L.S. Tapario is pretty well known in the drumming community right now for just doing these out of this world amazing drum stuff that I will never achieve, and I actually don't have a desire to do that. That's his thing. We'll let L.S. Tapario do L.S. Tapario stuff. So people look at me though as the expert when I have parents entrusting me with their children to be in here and work with them. I have adults who come to me and all they want to do is have fun and play in their living room and jam along to songs. Great. I have other people that have stars in their eyes. They want to take the necessary steps to try to be a drummer as a living themselves in whatever capacity that might be. So I have all these different personalities, all these different interests, and all these different reasons that people would want to take drum lessons. So their expectations is to look at me as the expert, and I need to present myself as such. So I have this room, and I have nice gear for them to play on, and it's not a bunch of disorganized chaos going on in here, so that we can actually get to work and do our thing and have a great time and learn. I bring that up because I belong to several different drum teacher communities, one which is based in Europe. I don't think telling you which one it is. These are private drum teacher groups, so you wouldn't be able to get in to these groups anyway. But But there was a guy who posted in this drum teaching group yesterday that he had been teaching lessons now for a year, and he just would like to have just one student who was normal. So him saying that to start piqued my interest in what he was going to say. And then he listed about a dozen or so scenarios of really bad experiences with students and or their parents. And then he listed this long exchange of a disaster online lesson that he was teaching. And so he kind of went into detail of this mess of camera angles not being right for him and for the student, and sound issues, and a parent on the other side who was giving him a hard time about not having his stuff together. So it was a disaster for him. And so then you start having people weighing in, and I think some people were kind of missing the larger picture. One was, how dare they talk to you this way? Some people saying that online was a horrible way to teach just because of the technology and the volume and all of these different things of why teaching online is difficult. So I chimed in and I said, I'm sorry that you're having this horrible experience. However, that when you are going to offer teaching online, you're the expert. You're the one who's supposed to have this figured out. You're the one that's supposed to have all this together. I said, figuring out the tech side of things is so important before you even press the go live or the Zoom link or whatever it is that you're using. Now we can get into the small details of all that, but I'm not going to. I'm just generally speaking, you have to have your stuff figured out. Yeah, you got to work out the audio. You can't start a Zoom meeting, because I think he was using Zoom, and spend the entire lesson trying to figure out what's wrong with the sound and what's wrong with the lighting and what's wrong with the camera angles, or if you have multiple cameras, all of those things. So I just said, you should probably get together with a friend and figure out the tech side of it. So A, you know what you're going to do and how you're going to provide that, and then give a list of what the student or parent needs to do on their end to be prepared so that they too will have a great experience. None of this which he had done. So he kind of stepped in it on his own and then had this bad exchange. And of course, so as a student and a parent, they're having expectations for this person to lead them down a path that is successful. And the other side of that whole coin was that he was just listing bad experience after bad experience after bad experience. Well, the only common denominator in that whole list of things is him. He's the one. So either he's not a good teacher, or he's just getting the string of bad luck, which is highly unlikely. I told him, I said, look, hey man, I teach drum lessons full time. I've been doing it for a few years. I, on average, maintain a student schedule of 40 students a week. I've never experienced any of these disasters that he's explaining. Now, why would that be? Because all my students are different. Their attention span's different. Their ages all range from 4 to 72. And the reasons for doing things. And so you have to constantly adjust in how you're teaching lessons. So I suggested to him that he should get together with some other teachers, not just, it could be any kind of teacher, but it would be helpful if it's a music teacher. Maybe somebody who teaches guitar or piano or even drums. Somebody else who has a successful teaching program Get together with them, make friends with them, take them out to coffee, and ask for some advice. Because I too asked for advice from people that I respected and valued their input and who were having success doing it themselves. I wouldn't go to another person who's never started or taught any to find advice from. that's backwards. You want to have forward momentum, not just wallow in all your struggles that you have with everybody else. He came back and he said that teachers in the area didn't respect him because he didn't have a music degree and a couple other excuses of why that he wouldn't be able to do that. Another drum teacher in this whole thing. Like I said, this is one's based out of Europe, so I don't know where they're located exactly. Not the United States, although some of the teachers in there are, including myself. One teacher has actually written a book on how to teach, and he suggested to this person to buy this book, and he said, "Hey, I can't even figure out how to click on this link." Okay, so his response told me that his tech side of things he doesn't have a grasp on, and I think that's what a lot of people were saying in response to him. It was like, "Hey," and also maybe one of the harder realities is maybe he's not meant to teach. Maybe he doesn't have the patience or any of those kind of things to be able to teach. Greg is here. Hi, Greg. I see that you've commented. Let's see. Put on my fun glasses. That's hard. That sounds like a him problem. Yeah, exactly. Truly, the biggest piece is not everyone is cut. Yep, exactly. One of my instructors once told me, "You will never teach another you." Did I read that right? One of my instructors once told me, "You will never teach another you." You mean that you, Greg, would never be teaching somebody else that's like yourself? Or I don't know. I don't quite understand that. Uh, I have several students that come in that definitely remind me of me in their drive and their passion, and of course they're taking lessons from me. So when I watch them play drums, a lot of times it's almost like watching a reflection of myself, because, and obviously because they're taking lessons from me. I think that I have certain mannerisms that I picked up from my parents. So your environment that's gonna definitely influence on how we how we learn and behave and do all those things. So that's the kind of the teaching side of those expectations. I saw that last night, and I thought it was really interesting, to say the least, that he was having all his problems. And just like Greg said, that sounds like a him problem. And when he told this other guy who recommended this book, he's like, "I can't even figure out how to click on that link." I was like, "Okay, you got some issues just on your side of the fence. That you got to work all this. If you definitely have a passion to teach, then you got to get some stuff straightened out." And like I suggested to him, like, I started to say when to meet with these other teachers, and he said that he didn't have a music degree and nobody took him seriously, and that so it was just anybody who commented on that, who had a successful teaching situation, whatever that suggestion was to better his situation, he immediately shut it down. Okay, so maybe he doesn't want help necessarily, or he's not willing to take the steps to improve that. So he's going to continue having these bad experiences, and by and large, he's going to end up not having students, and that's a reputation that's going to follow him, because people talk to each other, and they're going to say, "Hey, we tried to take lessons from this guy. Horrible experience." And so then that circle of people are going to know, and then that circle of people is going to relay that, and they're going to come across somebody else who was saying, "Who should we take drum lessons from?" And they're going to say, "Not that guy." and for whatever reasons those are. So that's that can be damaging to your reputation really fast. I have one student who has been with me for a little while. Super cool kid. I call him a kid. He's in high school. But he's a little slower in grasping some of these concepts. He's definitely made progress since he started, but early on, within like the first month or so of teaching him, he was getting a little frustrated because it wasn't coming to him as fast as he thought it should. And I said, man, it's totally okay. Everybody learns at a different rate. And he said, well, if I don't improve as fast as you think I should, are you going to fire me as a student? And I said, absolutely not. I said, did you have an experience with somebody else? And he said that he had tried some sports when he was younger, soccer and football and baseball. And in every one of those scenarios, coach didn't put him into play, or in one instance, he was kicked off the team. And so he had this worry attached to that, which we eliminated that being here. Like, no, we're going to work at your pace. Yes. Do I want you to practice? Absolutely. Can I push you a little bit? Yeah, absolutely. Because I want you to improve. I want you to gain some confidence. And so slowly he's progressing. I have other students that go a lot faster. I have some that go even slower than him. But, as teachers, we got to say the right thing at the right time. And that has to become a habit and a way of conducting yourself. So this other guy that had made this post, he's got a lot of work to do in order to improve his situation. But it appears he's not willing to take those steps. So what else does Mr. Greg say here? I see Christy popped on. Happy birthday, Christy Miller. Was that yesterday or the day before? This looks ridiculous. It was an interesting way to say that every student is unique and different, and each one has their own strengths and abilities which differ from your own. My most successful students are also very different from me. It's super cool. Yeah, because you're helping them, Greg, become who they are. And when I tell my students I'm going to turn them into me, but better, they look at me as having a certain ability, and they think, wow, if I could only be as good as, but then can be exceed those things. So Mary says he just wants to complain and have everyone agree with him. Yeah, most likely that could be the case. Most likely. We all witness how some people post, they just want to complain and get some kind of weird sympathy for that situation. And if you saw these posts, you would see that was the case with a handful of people. Oh, I'm so sorry, this and that and the other. Yeah, that sucks. And but as more people who have had success teaching started weighing in, they're like, hey, this isn't them, this is you, kind of that if you got to the heart of the matter, that's what the case was. So well, let's switch gears from teachers to just musicians in general on what their expectations are. So last Tuesday, I was on the Drummers Education Connection podcast that they do live every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific. So it streams to their Facebook page and to their YouTube page. About mid-November, they had me on as a guest. And so then last Tuesday, they had me on as a guest host. So it was me, Chip Ritter, Bart Robley, interviewing a gentleman by the name of Carl Cherry, who is a drummer who used to play with, why did his, not Don Henley, Bruce Hornsby. He used to play with Bruce Hornsby, and he'd also been a worship pastor at his church for many years, and he's just a killer drummer, and he's a killer bass player, and he's a killer pianist. So he's got a lot of skills, and he was talking a little bit about church musicians, which resonated with me because I've played drums at church for many years, and I fill in frequently at different churches around the valley. And so I asked him this question. I said, can you tell what kind of a musician, drummer or bass player you're going to be dealing with without even talking to them? Like, you see them walk in the room, how they carry themselves, how they're dressed, how they speak, and even the gear they have, like how well is their gear taken care of? What does that say about what kind of musician you're going to be playing with? And he said, man, I'm glad you asked me this, because I was just having the same discussion with another friend. He thought all of that was important. And he was talking about gear first and foremost, but he's like, if you're a bass player, make sure you have fresh strings. And just talking, he's like, man, I was just in a situation with a bass player who hadn't changed their strings in 5 years. 5 years. There's no way you're going to get quality sound out of that instrument for this job you need to do with 5-year-old bass strings. It's just not going to happen. So that was an irritation to him. But he said, yeah, if a drummer comes in and their gear's all raggedy and they got drum heads that are thrashed and all pitted and cracked cymbals, and he's like, man, this guy just doesn't care about how well his drums are going to sound. And so that tells them a lot about their mindset and their attitude towards how they're going to play, which is different from somebody that maybe can't afford some of those things. However, I guess conversely, if you are a musician who's good, you're probably making some money to play music. And if that's the case, then you can invest back into your instrument to make sure that you have drum heads that are operating and you have cymbals that sound good and aren't all cracked and sound like you just closed the trash lid. But he said, yeah, just the way people carry themselves and the way that they care for themselves and their gear speaks a lot about how they're going to be as a musician before they even play a note or hit a drum. And being prepared. And he shared stories of when he first got into playing with church bands and being the worship pastor. He said, a lot of churches have musicians that are volunteers, which that's fine, that's great, but they're not doing any of their homework throughout the week to be prepared to play songs. And so that drove him crazy, because we're talking about the guy who played with Bruce Hornsby. So he's used to a certain level of abilities and a certain level of expectations. And so trying to impress those same expectations on volunteers was he had to work through how he dealt with that. But nonetheless, I've been in situations too where I might get a call on a Saturday night late. Hey, is there any possible way that you could come play at our church on Sunday? I know it's late. You probably have plans, XYZ. Our drummer's sick, or whatever the case may be. Are you available? And if I'm available, I say yes. And we talk about how that's going to work, and they'll send me their songs. There's a program called Planning Center a lot of churches and bands use for sending music and charts and things like that back and forth. And so I might stay up, an hour and a half and listen to the songs, especially if they're songs they've never heard, and I'll make a chart and I'll be prepared and ready to go. Show up early so that nobody is waiting for me, so that I'm ready to go. And it just blows me away how many times that situation's happened, and I'll get there and the bass player hasn't even opened his Planning Center email until it's sound checks even over, and we're supposed to run some songs, and he's never once looked at the chart. He has no idea what he's going to play bass wise, and then he flumbles and flops about like crazy. And as a drummer, that's frustrating to be playing with the other rhythm instrument who can't keep it together. Um, so my expectations is when I'm being asked to come help, and there's one or two or three, sometimes more than people are not prepared at all, uh, is frustrating. I had filled in a church that I did, I think, 3 morning services, and then I think there was 1 or 2 evening services, and there was a special song that this gal was supposed to sing. Here we are, it's next in the list to rehearse. She's trying to find the lyrics on her phone. And these are songs these people have had for weeks. They just did not dedicate any time anywhere in their life to be able to be prepared. So I don't think my expectations are too high in that situation, but am I wrong in hoping that if you've had music for weeks that you could have looked at it a few times before now? And on top of that, the leader of that whole situation called an extra rehearsal earlier in the evening than what was originally planned. So now I'm adjusting, as I'm the guest musician, I've got to adjust my schedule even further for somebody who's regularly there who's not prepared. So my expectations in the worship music world are pretty low anymore, because now I just, like, as long as I'm taking care of my world, but it just seems like it's a horrible attitude to take towards playing music. And it doesn't only exist within the church music community. um, I play with Midline and I play with Cliff, and sometimes I play with other people, and situations come along, you got to fill in for somebody. Okay, send me the song list. Start working on the songs. Do they have to be perfect? Not necessarily. The more time you have to prepare, the better they should be. But sometimes it's, hey, we have a gig tonight. Can you come keep time? Yes, I can come keep time. So, and that's, paying attention. But if you're working, and especially songs that you've played multiple times, you still don't know the songs, I don't know how much longer you're going to keep getting called for a certain show, for gigs or anything like that. Greg, sometimes I don't even get a list. Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother skill set, right, Greg? Is to be able to get called to do something, and you have the ability to be aware on stage of what's happening, and to really be listening, and to really plug yourself in, and pull that off. That's a whole nother skill set to have, to be able to just you guys probably know the band Soul Purpose. I've played with them a handful of times. They play like 70 songs, maybe not 70, but they have their whole routine down when everybody is there. Uh, but the times I've filled in, I don't know all the little segues and stuff that they have when normally Pete would be drumming. But Corey, the bass player, is excellent about communicating with me. Okay, we're doing this. This is coming up. He'll give me the time. He'll set the tempo, and he's amazing at that. So I just stay locked in with Corey, and we're playing disco music by and large. So as long as that pulse is happening, I'm good to go. It's not perfect, but whenever Pete can't make something like that, I've been the guy that gets the call to do it. What else? Greg says music by osmosis. Yep. It's true. It's true. I've had some of my students who are working drummers around town who have uh, had opportunities to fill in or do something outside of their normal uh, thing. And they ask for advice, like what they should be paying attention to. Number one is the bass player. Oh, excuse me. Number one is paying attention to what the bass player is doing, listening to the bass player. At the same time, watching whoever's leading the band, the person singing and playing guitar, because they're not going to turn around and look at you to direct you. So when I'm sitting in the drummer's seat and I'm new to a situation, I'm listening, I'm locking in with the bass player, and then I'm watching body language of whoever's singing and playing guitar, because you could see their arm moving from behind, or you can look and see their foot tapping on the stage. Okay, there's another sign of tempo. And their body language can sometimes cue you in on where certain hits and things are going to happen. I'm not back there just staring at the floor and just hoping for the best. If I just put my head down, nobody will see me. I can hide back here and just wave my arms. No, I got to be paying attention to what's happening. I think that happens a lot with bands in general, where you go see a band and there's 5 or 6 people playing on stage. They're all playing the same song, but not at the same time. Which just means they're not listening. But it's, what are your expectations? What do you expect from professional musicians or people who are claiming to be professional musicians? Going back to the paint, like I go to the paint store, I want to buy paint. If we're consumers of music and we're going to go watch a live band because we want to dance or whatever, what are we expecting from the band as far as the quality of that band goes? Because we're looking at the people on the bandstand as experts in what they do, right? So how well are what are our expectations as an audience and as musicians? Can we deliver what is being expected of us? Especially, I wouldn't say that this is an excuse not to be good, but when people are paying to come see you play, what kind of experience are you going to give them? I want to try to provide a great experience every time I play. I don't always hit a home run, but I definitely swing the bat for the fences and try to do so. Let's see. Am I missing anything here? Anybody else got anything to say? Jared Anthony. Dude, I'm sorry that you're feeling under the weather. Let's see what Jared has to say. I got to put on my magic lenses here. Off topic. That's how we're starting this. Off topic. Off topic a bit, but a random question I've been wanting to ask you. Most rock drummers that are successful and appeal to me, like yourself, hit with a relaxed, flexible wrist snap and seem to hit fairly hard, or at least appear to. There's many local drummers who play with rigid wrists and seem to be holding back a bit. Do you have an opinion on this? I do have an opinion on that. It's not just. This is a thing that I see happen everywhere, at least in my travels. So what Jared's talking about is fluid motion. So I might have to back up. So when I play, my wrist moves up and down like this. So I'm articulating from many places: my shoulder, my elbow, my wrist, my fingers, all of this to have sort of this whipping motion. If you're a drummer, there's different techniques out there. One's called Moeller technique. So my technique definitely is sort of like a hybrid Moeller movement. But so when I play, yes, I'm hitting hard, but nothing that is jarring or abrupt, hard-hitting motion. So if you were to pull this drumstick out of my hand, the drumstick moves really easy. I'm barely holding onto the stick, just enough it doesn't fly out of my hand. Now, there are some guys who grip. You can even see the color of my skin change because of how the blood is in my fingers. So when we grip tight, now we're rigid. Anything that we hit, is that shock of that hit. It's going to travel through the stick, through my fingers. And, a lot of times when drummers get done playing and they're completely spent and they're exhausted, a lot of times it's because they've just been holding on so tight and just, A lot of times it's articulating from the elbow. So you see this stiffer movement. I got to move my stick a little slower. So you see this motion, which is very hard and jarring, versus this motion, which is fluid. It's still a hard-hitting sound, but it's not jarring to our bodies. It's not jarring to our equipment. I don't know if you'd be able to hear this very well without distorting this mic, but if I hold my sticks very loosely, you can hear some resonance in the sticks. Compared to if I grab tighter, see the pitch changes? It's not resonating anymore. Loose, tight. Those two sounds translate to your equipment. They translate to your cymbals. It translates to your drum heads. It totally changes how your drums and cymbals will sound, just based on how tight you hold the drumsticks. So, one expansion off of that, if you could see, I'm trying to get into frame here. I play. See, I'm backwards. I play with, generally speaking, with my palm and my fist facing down. My thumbnails face each other, so I don't play this way. This is called French grip. This is used mostly in pitch percussion front ensemble situations, timpani drum like this. So this is called German grip with the hands facing down, and then American is kind of in between French and German. Then there's Italian. Just kidding. So I don't know if that answers your question there, Jared, but I mean, it's a deep dive into all of that. But yeah, you see articulation happening from the elbow. So you have this, they're relying on everything happening here. And that's where drummers end up with the tennis elbow. They have a lot of injuries in their shoulder area, arthritis, pain, none of which I have. I've been drumming for 41 years, no injuries whatsoever from drumming. And if anybody knows me, I'm fairly animated drummer, especially playing with midline and things like that, big, huge arm movements, and because I think it's a show as well. I think you got to be an entertainer. So rather than just sitting back there. The other grip I talk about is traditional grip. I've mentioned traditional grip before. This whole grip only exists from like Civil War, pre-Civil War era, when a drummer had a drum slung around his neck, just like it shows in this picture right here. Where am I? Over here. You guys see that? He's got a drum on a strap. This book was written in the early 1930s by George Lawrence Stone. Is still relevant today. So there's George Lawrence Stone, and then I mentioned the Moeller technique. All those guys came up with a way of drumming that was free-flowing movement like that. So tension is the enemy of motion. You don't want to be tense. Let's see, what did I miss here? Let's get the glasses back on. This is my life now, people. Some readers. Let's see. All right. So Jared said the cat on the Tonight Show is another great example. I'm not sure who's on the Tonight Show anymore. So if you've watched Sean Pelton play, who plays on Saturday Night Live, he plays like that. Yeah, there's a lot of really great drummers. Greg says, I expect people to be a good hang. Oh, yeah, for sure. I expect people to leave their vices and drama at the door, for sure. Yeah, I think for me personally, dealing with people and their things they have to do in order to prepare themselves to play, like their what do I want to say? Their self-medicating devices. My expectation is that whoever I work with is giving all their best. Yeah, whatever that means for their individual skill level. Finally, I expect drummers to count fills. Yep. Alexander, hey buddy, thank you so much. Kirby, allow your sticks to do the work. Yeah. Mr. Klein says, wisdom, Eric is here. Yeah. Let the sticks do the work. Exactly. That's really, really important. We're guiding the sticks along, but we got to let the sticks do what they do to make that sound. And when you're gripping tight, it's just not. And I think that goes for any style that you're playing. You want to move very freely, very fluid. Like, think of your time as a point on a circle rather than a dot on the line. So if let's say you marked a mark on your tire and your tire's going around and you're maintaining speed, and that dot's going to hit the ground at the same time every time, but we're not pogo sticking like this. Time isn't this. It's fluid. Boom, 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 boom. Not. That's how your drumming needs to be. Hey, there's your 3-minute Fred Fisher drum lesson for today.